Hello everyone, I'm Kirtana, the technical author of Anbox Cloud, bringing you news about the latest 127.0 release of Anbox Cloud. 127.0 is a minor release with features that set the ground for bigger and better things in the Anbox Cloud world. Before I start discussing the features, I would like to mention the usual reminder about checking requirements to understand what needs to be in place for you to run Anbox Cloud successfully. Now, moving on to the features, you probably already know that you can install AMS, the management component, in a different machine from other Anbox components and authenticate using mutual TLS. So that's how you access AMS remotely. Now we are bringing you OpenID Connect authentication tool. So with this release, you can use either the Anbox Cloud dashboard or the AMC CLI to establish OIDC connection for authentication. However, keep in mind that this is an alpha release and is still in active development. So the interfaces and endpoints could change in the subsequent releases. So try it out in your development environments and hold off a bit for your production ones. This release, the Anbox Cloud dashboard, brings you two new features, the operations page and a notification center. The operations page will be particularly useful for system administrators who need to monitor many asynchronous long running operations. My colleagues will demonstrate these features soon in this video. Then moving on to deprecations and remote functionality, as announced already in a couple of releases earlier, this release removes support for Juju 2.9 and kernels older than 6.8. So remember to upgrade your deployment if you're using any of these older versions. Finally, known issues and bug fixes. If you face an issue with Anbox Cloud, check out our list of open bugs in Launchpad. It may already be a known issue. With 127.0, a number of Android CVEs were assessed as not critically impacting for Anbox Cloud, so they are not yet included in this release, but will be in the future ones. And there are a number of bug fixes that accompany this release too. With that, let me hand over to my colleagues for demos.
Hi, my name is Anusha, and I'm a software engineer working on Anbox Cloud. In this demo, I'll walk you through a new experimental feature we've added to EMS, which is authentication using OIDC. I'll show you how you can manage identities and how end users can log in through their identity provider. So with this recent addition, there's now a new set of commands in AMC for managing identities in EMS. Using these, you can create, list, and even delete users. For this demo, I've set up two different terminals. The one on top is that of an admin session, someone who already has authenticated access to EMS. The one at the bottom is a regular user who wants to authenticate using AMC. So let's start from the admin side. If I run AMC or identity, you can see the new set of identity management commands. So to check if there are any existing identities, I can run AMC identity list. Right now, the table is empty, which means we don't have any existing users. So let's go ahead and register a new user. I'll do that with AMC or identity register, followed by the email ID of the user that I want to register. For this demo, I've created a dummy user with the email ID test. Example. This prints out the ID of the newly registered user. If I want to see more details about any user, I can grab their ID and run the command AMC or entity show, followed by their ID. And as you can see here, it gives you details about that identity, including their ID, which groups they belong to, the authentication method, email, and when they were created and updated. So if I quickly list all the identities again, you can see that the user has now been created. There's one more command to cover, but I'll get to that in just a bit. So now that you've seen how most of the identity commands work, let's go through how to configure your chosen identity provider so that this test user that we just registered can actually authenticate themselves. To enable OIDC authentication in AMS, there are a few prerequisites. The admin needs to configure some values that come directly from the identity provider. For this demo, I've created an application in Auth0, and I'll configure those values in AMS. So there are three key pieces of information that we need. We need the issuer URL, we need the client ID, and if your identity provider requires one, we also need the value of the audience. With Auth0, it does require the audience value. I've already saved these in my environment variables for the demo. So now I can begin configuring them in AMS by running amc config set ydc dot. Let's start with the issuer URL. I'll also configure the client ID. And lastly, I'll also configure the workplace. Okay, with that, our Auth0 identity provider is now configured in AMS. Now let's move over to the other terminal, which is representing the test user who isn't authenticated yet. First, this user needs to configure AMC to connect to this remote AMS. So I can add the remote by running AMC remote add and giving this remote a name. Let's call it Anbox Cloud, followed by the IP address of the AMS machine, which in my case is yes. Followed by the port, which is 8444 by default, unless you've changed this. And we're also going to specify the authentication method as OIDC. So when you run this, AMC connects to AMS and shows the server certificate fingerprint. You can acknowledge this by typing yes. So this opens a login page from the configured identity provider, which in my case is Auth0. You'll see a code on the screen, and it should match what AMC displays in the terminal, which it does. So I will confirm this. I proceed to login. Okay, I'll also accept access to my profile and email ID and offline access to refresh my tokens. And that's it. Now, if I go back, I can see that the user is now authenticated. But there's one final step, which is to switch to this remote and set it as a default. So all the future AMC commands use this remote. We can do this by running AMC remote set default, followed by the name, which we had given at Anbox Cloud. And to confirm this, I'll run AMC remote list. As you can see, it shows that Anbox Cloud is now the default remote. Before we wrap up, let's go back to this admin terminal and cover one last command, delete. If you want to revoke access for a specific user, first grab their identity ID, which I already have over here, and then run the command amc entity delete, followed by the ID of that user. I will confirm this action. And to confirm this, I will list the identities again. As you'll see, the user has now been removed. And that's it for authentication and the new identity management commands in EMS. I hope you found this helpful. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Michele, a software engineer for Anbox Cloud dashboard, and I will show you now the new features that we implemented for version 127 in the dashboard. These are the notification center and the operations page. Let's see them together. Let's create an instance. And you see that now the notification is being displayed here as a toast notification. Basically, it's an overlay on the page instead of taking space in this area as it did before. The overlay notification will disappear within a few seconds, but you can still access the notifications that you have received at any time by clicking on this button here, which is the one that opens the list of notifications. And you can do many things here. You can filter the notifications by type. So for example, by clicking on this button, you will only see the success notification, and you can clear the filters. And you can select other filters. This one will only show you the information on notifications. Then you can dismiss the notifications, of course. You can dismiss them individually, or you can dismiss them all. And you can also dismiss all the notifications of one type by selecting a filter and then clicking. In this case, we only have one. Let's maybe create another instance just to have a second one. Now they see that you have two info notifications here, and you can dismiss both of them together. And now we have only the success notifications left. This was the notification center. Let's now see the operations page. And the operations page is basically a page to display long-running operations so that you can see what's going on and check the status of the operation. Let's, for example, trigger a long-running operation like deleting an instance can be one example. You see that now that we trigger the instance delete, we have a link appearing here in this status bar that tells us that there is one operation in progress. So we can click on this link and this will move us to the operations page. Now the operation has just succeeded, so it will vanish soon. Because successful operations will vanish within a few seconds. So from this page, you can do many things. Again, it's a list of operations. It will tell you what's happening, on which resource, when, and other information is there available. In this case, we don't have other information available, so we only see this information. And you can filter operations by status. So in this case, well, now the operation has just vanished, so we don't see it anymore. And if we still had an operation, for example, let's delete the other instance we created before, so that we trigger another operation, and you can filter them by, for example, if now I select failure, there is no operation, no failure operation. But if I select running, there is this operation which is running. Now it will soon become success, so it will disappear from here. Okay, so these were the two things that we introduced. And as you can see, they have been introduced in this new status bar at bottom of the Anbox Cloud dashboard, which will also tell you the version of the product. So that's all for Anbox Cloud dashboard in 127 release.